Hello everyone, how are you all? Myself Sunil Pawar, welcome you back for the next session of 12th class biology. Okay, as you know that we started with chapter 1 and then we taken this chapter number 2 and we divided this chapter number 2 into 3 parts. Okay, what is the chapter? Reproduction in flowering plants, and this is part 2. Why we call it part 2? Because this chapter is divided into 3 parts. One, that is pre-fertilization events, second is fertilization, and third one is post-fertilization event. So in this video we are going to just cover this fertilization, whatever the processes which takes place during the fertilization. Okay, so now here in this one we will begin with the pollination. As you learned in the previous video that what is the gamete formation, male gamete and female gamete was produced, and now the second event is there which takes place during this process, that is the pollination. Okay, a few facts are given about the pollination, in which the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of the stamen to the receptive stigma of the carpel is called pollination. The simple one, when the anther and ovule get mature, then after maturation this anther get dehiscent, and it dehiscence is responsible for the dispersal of the pollen grain, and this pollen grain with the help of the different agencies or itself is transferred from anther to stigma. So this is called as pollen grain. Okay, the flowering plants have evolved an amazing array of adaptation to achieve pollination. They actually adapted themselves for this beautiful and very important event, that is the pollination. Okay, so on the basis of the sources and this pollen grains, we can categorize them into 3 categories. One is autogamy, which can be also called as cell pollination. Second is geitonogamy. It is also actually a type of cell pollination, but we kept in the separate category because of a very small difference. And third one, that is the xenogamy, or we can call it the cross pollination simply. So first we are taking what is the autogamy. Auto means self and gamy means marriage or togetherness. Clear? So simply it is the kind of pollination achieved within the same flower. Okay, this is the most important fact. The flower must be a bisexual flower. Okay, a complete flower, and the pollen from the anthers of a flower are transferred to the stigma of the same flower. So many good examples are there, like the wheat, rice, pea, and this one thing. In this one we observe that there is only and only shifting of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. Okay, this is the most important. That's why we call it the auto or self. That means the transfer within the same flower. Then second one, that is geitonogamy. It is a kind of cell pollination where the pollen grains from the anther of a flower are transferred to the stigma of the another flower borne on the same plant but at different branches. Okay, so this is a very important fact about this one thing. Why we mention it separately, even though it is a type of cell pollination, because of the flowers are unisexual, either staminate flower or pistillate flower. But what is the special feature of this plant? This plant is bisexual. This plant is monoecious in nature, in which the male flowers and female flower go separately on the different branches but on the same plant. Okay, so when the anthers transfer their pollen grain to the stigma of the flower of the same plant, then we will call it the geitonogamy. Okay, and this kind of examples is basically observed. Wheat is a very common example, maize is also a very common example where we can see this thing. Okay, now then here we come to the next one, that is xenogamy, or simply it is called as cross pollination. It is different from this one thing. In this one also, the transfer of pollen grain from anther of one flower to the stigma of the another flower of other plant. That is the most important fact about the same species thing. And papaya, and this one is a good example of this xenogamy. Okay, so now Here we are moving forward to discuss this in somewhat expanded way. What is the first one? That is the autogamy, or we call it the self-pollination. Okay, there is a kind of pollination achieved within the same flower. We already discussed this one thing, but for this one thing, for this autogamy or to facilitate this process, these plants actually adopted themselves. Okay, so in this one, the one of the two of the most important facts about this one thing, one is about the flower, that is the Cristogamous flower, and that is the Chasmogamous flower. What is the Cristogamous? Cristo means closed. Okay, so these are closed flowers, and their anthers and stigma lie close to each other. That means these flowers are not open up for the others, they are not exposed with the others. So that's why there is no possibility of inserting other pollen grains. Okay, Chasmogamous flower, these are open flower with exposed sex organ, and the anthers and stigma of these flowers are brought together by growth and bending or folding, and on this the pollen grains from other flowers can be landed on this stigma. Okay, this Chasmogamous is actually also somewhat open in nature, but what happened, their stigma and that stamen is arranged in somewhat way, they nearly avoid 90% chances of cross pollination. So this way, by bending on each other, they can facilitate this process. Next one thing, that is the bud pollination. Okay, it is very clear from this one thing, bud pollination. In this one, what happened, the reproductive organ of the flower is fully mature during the bud stage. So before opening the flower, okay, this pollination is already took place, and it is responsible for pollinating the own stigma. The next one, that is the homogamy. Homo means self and gamy means togetherness. Maturation of anthers and stigma of a flower at the same time is called homogamy. It is very essential point for the bisexual flower of open type in nature. Even though flower is open, but the male and female gametophyte or the reproductive organs become mature at the same time. So this is the most important fact about this one thing. Then flowers are non-attractive. Okay, generally flowers are colorless or green in color. You can see in this type of flowers either they are green or they are non-attractive in nature. That means colorless or no fragrance, nothing is there. Okay, flowers are small in size. That means they are unable to detect from a long distance by the agencies. Next one thing, the nectar glands are absent. You know that this one of the most important agency during the entomophily. Okay, this insects are roaming from one flower to another flower only in search of this nectar. So in this plant, these nectar glands are absent, they are colorless, they are non-attracting in nature, they are small in nature, and they goes inward. That means inside or in internal part of the plant. So that's why this way they just avoid the possibility of cross-pollination. Now here we can take the advantages of the self-pollination. So first of all, there are several advantages for self-pollination, pollinating flower. First one, if a given genotype is well suited for an environment, self-pollination helps to keep this trait stable in the species. This is the most important feature of this self-pollination, because you know that there is no intermingling with the other genetic material. So that's why if any variety, if any species well suited for a particular environmental condition, so there is no chances of any kind of variation, there is no possibility of any entrance of any new character. That's why it is very important. Next one, self-pollinating plants do not depend on external carrier. That means they don't needed any agency to carry them from one flower to another one. Self-pollination is an advantage when the number of flowers is small or they are widely spread. Okay, this is the most important fact. Suppose that if plants are located far away from each other, if the pollen grains which produces in very less quantity, then this cell pollination is actually a boon for this kind of plants. There is less wastage of pollen grain, that means with a small quantity of pollen grains they can manage. Okay, they also cannot make change in their characters, and so the features of a species can be maintained with purity. What we discussed in this point, it is nearly the same one. The purity of the species and the genetic material is maintained by this cell pollination. Next one, cell pollination also helps to preserve parental character as the gamete from the same flowers are evolved, because we know that there is no mixing of the genetic material from the other plant, so the gametes is also pure in nature. It is not necessary for flowers to produce nectar, scent, or to be colorful in order to attract the pollinators. This is actually adaptation to save the extra energy. No need of consuming the extra energy, no need of decorating themselves, no need of producing this nectar or this extra energy, can be managed there only. Along with the advantages, some disadvantages are also there. We can see that the first disadvantage of cell pollination is the lack of variation that allows no adaptation to the changing environment or potential pathogen attack. This is the most important fact about this one thing, or one of the biggest drawback for this cell pollination, because of same genetic material always there, no mutation, nothing is there. That's why mostly the genetic material become weak in nature, no variation will observe, so that's why it cannot be adopted. No variation, no adaptation, no changes. Okay, now cell pollination can lead to inbreeding depression caused by expression of deleterious recessive mutations, or to the reduced health of the species and due to the breeding of related specimens. The same breeding or the inbreeding is responsible for inbreeding depression. Inbreeding depression means what? Gradually the individual of the same variety will loses their vitality, their viability, their capacity to exist, their germination power, their resistance against the diseases. Okay, so this is the biggest drawback, that is the inbreeding depression. Next one, the genetic defects in cell pollinating plants cannot be eliminated by the genetic recombination. We know that genetic recombination is also helpful for bringing the new character, and this new dominating character is responsible to eliminate the old defective features, so it is impossible in this one. And because of no variation, not important for evolutionary point of view. We know that no variation, no changes, no region of a new species, no important for evolutionary point of view. So now we are moving forward for the cross pollination, or we call it the xenogamy. Okay, as we know that it involves the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of pollen grains from the anther of one plant to the stigma of another plant. Okay, and we know that it is one of the adaptation for correction or improving or adaptation for this thing or the variety. Clear? Now for this one thing, if we observe that in this one some features are there, like with the dichogamy. What is the dichogamy? In some plant species, receptivity of stigma and pollen release is not synchronized. That means the pollen grains and the ovule not get matured at the same time. Okay, so this is the biggest drawback for this one thing, and this is the advantages also. And these two terms are called as protandry and protogyny. What is the protandry? Protandry means what? Pro means before, and androus means the this anther. Okay, this anther get matured before the maturity of the gynoecium or the female reproductive part. So that's why no use of this pollen grains for the same flower. And the second condition is the protogyny. Proto means previous or earlier. In this one, gynoecium become mature before the androecium, or what we call the anther. Okay. Now next one thing, heterostyly. That means the styles are different in size. The anther and stigma are placed at different position, so that pollen cannot come in contact with the stigma of the same flower. So that's why this is the second adaptation, or this is the condition which is required by this bisexual plant, in which the size of the stigma, that means the female reproductive part and the male reproductive part different. So that's why it is just like a very good example of the China rose, okay, where you can see that the stamens and the stigma is different in size. Then self-incompatibility, this is the most important feature. It is a genetic phenomenon of preventing the pollen from fertilizing ovule of the same flower by inhibiting pollen germination or pollen tube growth. This is the most important phenomenon, self-incompatibility. That means what? In this one, the pollen grain of the same flower is unable to grow on the surface of the stigma, or they are unable to bring their pollen tube up to the ovule by producing some chemicals, or by avoiding this process of germination of this one. So this is the most important one. Then declining of unisexuality. That means what? It is the presence of unisexual flower. So mostly this kind of pollination is confirmed by the unisexual or dioecious plants. One more is hercogamy. The male or female sex organs themselves prove as a barrier to prevent cell pollination by some structural abnormalities. In this one, what happened? The flowers actually arrange their different parts, or during the growth of this one thing, in such a way by which they produce some barriers between these two reproductions. The dioecious, in this both autogamy and geitonogamy are prevented. Okay, so each plant is either male or female, just like papaya or this one thing, where the plant is only contain only unisexual flower. So that's why there is no possibility of any such this kind of autogamy of xenogamy. That is the geitonogamy. Now here, moving forward with this cross pollination, here we can see that some agencies are required. So with the help of this chart form, we can learn the agents of pollination. Okay, first we can divide them into two parts. One, that is the biotic agents, and second is abiotic agent, and second is biotic agents. Okay, abiotic agents are again two types. One is wind, second is water. Okay, so when the wind is actually play the role of agency to transfer the pollen grain from anther to stigma of another flower, is called as wind pollination. It is also called as anemophily. Okay, so in this wind pollination or anemophily, some special features this plants actually needed. Okay, in this one, what happened? This pollen grains which produced by them should be very small. Okay, they should be lightweighted, and they must remain for a long period of time in the air. So their shape or their structure must be like this one. Okay, and because of they should have a feathery stigma. Okay, so this feathery stigma is helpful to catch the pollen grains. Okay, this flower should grow on the external part of the plant, or external surface of the plant. Okay, and at a time it produces such a large number of pollen grains. So only this process can be facilitated. Okay, now next one thing, that is the water. The second agency is the water. It is also called as the hydrophily. Okay, in this one, the water waves are basically responsible to play the role of carrying this pollen grain from anther to stigma of the other flower. Okay, a very good example is observed in the Vallisneria. Okay, Vallisneria is actually rooted underground plant. Okay, in which you can see that the male flowers and female flowers grows on the different branches of the plant. Okay, at the time of maturity, this small male flowers actually releases by this plant. Okay, they comes on the surface of the water and they just move away with the help of the water waves. Clear? When the female part become mature, female flower become mature, then its branch become uncoiled, unfolded, and bring it on the surface of the water. Clear? So at the time of pollination, the male flowers bring to the female flower. It is a cage-shaped structure. So in this rib-like features, they enter inside it, and this flower get closed and get pollinated, and this way it again get rolled back and goes to the under the water surface. Okay, so these two are the good example of abiotic agents. These two agencies are there. One is wind and second is water. Now we are moving forward for the biotic agents. So basically 5 categories are there: insect, birds, molluscans, mammals and reptiles. So in this one, first we are considering about the insect. Insect is the most common way of transferring the pollen grain from one plant to another plant, or one flower to another flower. Okay, it is called as the entomophily. And for this insect pollination, these flowers or plants are having some special features. Okay, what are the special features? First of all, these flowers are attractive. How they become attractive? By having bright colors or colorful structures. Okay, and you also know that the flowers who is day blooming, they are having dark color in nature, and the flowers which is night blooming, likewise champa, sadabahar, okay, mogra, these all one. So they are bright white in color, and they are also having such a strong fragrance, so they can be detected from a long distance by the insects. Clear? Then these flowers are also having scent glands. Clear? So this scent gland is helpful to attract the insects. Clear? And these flowers are large in size. Okay, and they also helpful for attracting the insects. So this quality should be there in the insect pollination, or what we call the entomophily. Okay, just like even that the largest flower in the nature is also pollinated by the flies even. Okay, now we are moving forward to the next agency, that is the birds. What is called as the ornithophily. Okay, ornithine means what? Birds. When the pollination takes place by the birds, then it is called as the ornithophily. Okay, in this ornithophily we observe that when these birds are roaming from one plant to another plant, one flower to other flower for searching the food as a nectar, then they inserted their beak inside the flower and they just stuck by the pollen grains, and when they reaches to the other flower, then they are responsible for pollinating. The third is molluscans, or it is also called the malacophily. I think so you are familiar with this snail and this garden slug and this one thing. They are creepers. Okay, when they are moving and just passes away from any one plant or the small plant who lay down their branches on the ground surface. Okay, so they collected their pollen grains, they stick with their body, and when they goes to the next flower, then they are responsible for pollinating it. So this is the malacophily. Then the mammals. The bat are the very good example. Even some raccoons and some baboons are also there. So this bat or chiroptophily, it is especially because of this bat. So you know that they are the fruit eaters, fructivorous in nature. So in search of fruit, when they move from one to another, then they also responsible to carry this pollen grain from one flower to another flower. Okay, and finally the reptiles. Okay, you know that the snakes. Okay, then second the lizard, this the garden lizard especially. So when they move from one part to another part, or from one branch to another branch, or from one tree or plant to another tree, then it is responsible for pollinating the flowers. So this is the reptiles, and this is the cross pollination of different agencies are there. Okay, so now here the next part is pollen pistil interaction. Okay, after the pollination, now what you observe, already pollen grains are transferred from male reproductive part anther to the female reproductive part stigma of the another flower, and now here these pollen grains are ready to germinate and to fertilize this something. So for this purpose, the second step is pollen pistil interaction. Okay, in this one, the events from the deposition of pollen on the stigma till the entry of pollen tube into the ovule are collectively called pollen pistil interaction. Simply, the entrance of the pollen tube from the stigma, it passes through the style and reaches to the ovule. Till that, this is called the pollen pistil interaction. So it is an essential step in fertilization of angiosperms and determines compatibility and incompatibility of pollen and pistil. So it is a dynamic process involving pollen recognition followed by inhibition or promotion of pollen. Clear? This is the most important fact. Okay, now moving forward, that is the recognition of the compatible pollen. We learned in the previous slide, that is the compatibility and incompatibility of the pollen tube. Okay, so what is the meaning of compatibility? The favorability, the favoring, whether this pollen grains is able to mate with the female gamete and to fuse and fertilize or not. So when they are able to perform this one thing, that is called as compatibility, and when they are unable to perform this one thing, then it is called as incompatibility. Okay, so the pistil has the ability to recognize and accept the right, that means the compatible pollen of the same species, and to reject the pollen grains that are incompatible either of the same species or of other species. Okay, it is the result of continuous dialogue mediated by chemical components of the pollen interacting with those of the pistil, and after recognition of the correct pollen, pistil promote the post-pollination events that lead to the fertilization. Okay, during this one thing, these actually chemicals played the most important role for this purpose. What is the role? These chemicals allowed to germinate this pollen grain. You know that this pollen grain, when shifted to the stigma, then it will further germinated and just penetrate the stigma surface, and it is only possible if it is compatible. What is the compatible? That means it is the right choice for the further processes. How it can be right choice? By this chemical dialogue, which is actually mediated by this some hormones, some enzymes who allow to dissolve the surface of the stigma and the pollen grains only, then only it is possible. Okay, so when the pistil get recognized as a right pollen grains, then only it allowed to germinate on it. Okay, so what are the next events? We can see with the help of this one thing: germination of pollen grains and growth of pollen tube. Okay, in our previous video we already talked about the structure of the pollen grain. Okay, you know that this pollen grain is double walled structure. The outer is exine and inner is antine. Exine is hard and rough and dead surface, while the antine is smooth and living surface. Okay, and it is either one or more than one germ pore according to different species. Clear? So the pollen grains reach the receptive stigma of the carpel by the act of pollination, that is pollen grain is already transferred. The pollen grains, after getting attached to the stigma, absorb water and swell up, and this swelling is responsible to crack the exine, and this cracking of exine is responsible to open the germ pore, and due to this one thing This germ pore is responsible to bring out the pollen tube, and now the content of the pollen grain then move into the tube, and the pollen tube grows through the tissues of stigma and style by secreting the the enzyme that digests them. Okay, so this is the process which you observe here. Now the pollen tube is already germinated, it already penetrated this one thing. Okay, so this pollen tube is now just passes through the style and reaches to the ovule. Okay, so the path and the entrance of the pollen tube in the ovule may be performed in three different ways. Okay, so one from the this is the micropylar end, clear, this is the chalazal end, and this is from the laterally arranged wall or the integument. So simply we call them porogamy, second is called as chalazogamy, and third is called as the mesogamy. So what is the porogamy? When pollen tube crosses the style, reaches to the ovule and enter through the micropyle and through the micropore, then it is called as porogamy. Second is something chalazogamy. You can see that it is not just passing through this one and reaches to this point. Okay, it just inserted by penetrating the chalazal end of the ovule by the outer integument, and then it inserts into the embryo sac and releases its gametes here only. And third one, there is a mesogamy, where neither from the micropyle end nor from the chalazal end, but horizontally it enters through the integuments and reaches to this the egg apparatus. So these are the three one. And one more is important fact you should remember about this term, that is called the siphonogamy. Siphon, you can see that this tubular structure, because the shifting of the male gametes to the ovule is performed with the help of this tubular structure, siphon like structure. That's why we call it the siphonogamy. Now here the most important event which observed in the angiosperm, it is also a characteristic feature of the angiosperm too, that is called as the double fertilization. Okay, so in this process or during the double fertilization, we can learn that the process was demonstrated for the first time by Novacek or Novacin in 1898 in the Lilium and Fritillaria. So this event was actually discovered in 1898 by this Novacin. The most important, the unique characteristic feature of angiosperm is the participation of both male gametes in the act of fertilization. Okay, as we learned in our previous discussion, this pollen grain contain two male gametes. Okay, so that's why these two male gametes will be responsible for this double fertilization. One male gamete fuses with the egg cell to form a diploid zygote, and this process is called syngamy or generative fertilization. Okay, you remember in the embryo sac, okay, there are two different cells, one is the egg cell and second is the secondary nucleus. So this first male nucleus fuses with the female gamete, that is the egg cell, and that is the generative cell, that's why it is called as the generative fertilization, and form the zygote, which is further responsible for the development of the embryo. The diploid zygote finally develops into the embryo, we develop the new plant. The second male gamete fuses with the two polar nuclei or secondary nucleus in the central cell from the triploid primary endosperm nucleus, that is the PEN, P-E-N. Okay, and this process is called the triple fusion, as three haploid nuclei are involved in the fusion. It is second fertilization. Second male gamete reaches to the center of the ovule where a diploid secondary nucleus is there. Okay, and now the third nuclei as a male nuclei, when fuses there, that is a combination of three nuclei, so it is called as the triple fusion and double fertilization. After triple fusion, the central cell becomes the primary endospermic cell, and which given rise to the endosperm, and while the zygote develops into the embryo. Okay, so what is the importance of this one thing? It will produce a triploid nuclei, okay, which is responsible to produce endosperm. And you know that what is the function of endosperm? Endosperm is responsible for nourishing the growing embryo. So to facilitate this process, as both the fusion, syngamy and triple fusion occurs in an embryo, the phenomenon is termed as the double fertilization. So this is very clear, and we can also learn with the help of this diagram. Okay, you remember at this point, okay, these three antipodal cells are there and this egg apparatus is there. In this egg apparatus, one is egg nuclei and two are synergids. Okay, so in this process you can see that this pollen tube through this path reaches to this micropyle, where these two male gametes is released out at this pore, where they stay for a while, and later on one male nucleus get fuses with this egg cell and it produces a diploid zygote. And what about the second nuclei? It passes through this synergid. Actually this synergid facilitates the process of double fertilization. They give the path to reaches to the central nuclei that is already diploid in nature, and this third nuclei as a male nuclei is reaches to there and combine and form a triploid structure that is called a triple fusion. Okay, and this new structure will form, that is called as the endosperm. So remember, this endosperm is responsible to produce the facilitate the nutrition for the growing embryo, and the zygote is responsible for the development of the. Okay, moving forward, that is the artificial hybridization. Okay, when actually it is the crossing of different species and often generate to combine the desirable characters to produce commercially superior varieties. Okay, just this process is actually adopted. It is the artificial one. That means except in the normal pollination, when we need to introduce the new character or to convert an inferior variety into the superior variety, so this method is very common. Okay, so it has been used by the plant breeders for crop improvement program. In this two main stages there. One is emasculation and second is bagging. What is emasculation? The anther is removed from the bud before it dies using a pair of forceps. Okay, you can see here what we observe, that when the flower is in bud form, okay, so before its maturation or before its blooming, by using a flower we can remove or we can eliminate out this anther or the stamen from this one thing, and this way this method is responsible to convert this bisexual flower into unisexual flower. And then later on, when this female reproductive part gynoecium become mature, then by using a mature anther from the desired plant variety, bring and sprinkle over this stigma, and this way it gets pollinated. So this is the emasculation. Second is bagging. The emasculated flower is covered by bags of suitable size, generally made up of butter paper, so to prevent the contamination of the stigma by unwanted pollen grains. Here you can see that this emasculated flower is covered by this polythene bag. So it is helpful to prevent the unwanted entry of the pollen grains, and later on whatever needed we can pollinate this one thing. Okay, so this is also called as the bagging and trapping. Clear? So this is two artificial method of hybridization to attain or to obtain the desired characters. Okay, so this all about today's discussion. In this topic we just learn and discuss about the events which occurs during the fertilization. Okay, in next video we'll talk about the post fertilizational events. Okay, so till that, just keep learning and keep reading. Thank you.